Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dawn Genvy, and I'm a research manager in the Patient and Public Involvement team at NIHR. Welcome to the 10th in our PPI in Action webinar series. Today's presentation is called Science Powered by Parents. Before the presentation, I'm just going to very quickly run through some housekeeping. Next slide, please. Please use the chat function if you would like to network with others on the webinar. We're not monitoring this, so please do not use the chat for questions. You can enable captions by clicking on the CC button. Next slide, please. And if you would like to ask a question, please use the Q&A function by clicking on the Q&A button. You can select to send anonymously if you don't want your name displayed with your question. Once you've finished, remember to click send to submit it. Without further ado, I'm now delighted to hand you over to Professor Dan Perry.
Hi team. Thanks so much for having us. So I'm Dan Perry. I'm a kids orthopedic surgeon. So I work at Alder Hey Children's Hospital in Liverpool, and I do clinical trials. So I work at University of Liverpool, do clinical trials with the University of Oxford. And with me today, I've got one of the parents who very much leads the group and has been involved hugely with what we do and what we deliver, called Phoebe Gibson.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Phoebe. So what we are not is we're not PPI experts. So we're not claiming to be PPI experts. We're just talking today about how we've done PPI and what we've learned along the way, and to give you some practical examples about how it's worked for us, what's worked, and I guess what hasn't worked in certain places. So I'm an orthopedic surgeon, and in hospitals, everyone thinks the orthopedic surgeons are the really nasty guys. And what I'm here to prove to you is what's actually behind the mask. And we're actually the nice guys, and we're the thinking surgeons, and we're going to show you just how we involve patients in what we do. So about 10 years ago, in the world of children's orthopedics, there was no research. And over the course of the last few years, we've built a massive, or a much bigger, research infrastructure, and we've got lots and lots of clinical research, clinical trials which are going on and being delivered across the country in loads of different hospitals. And parents and families have been with us the whole way on that journey. So that's what I want to talk to you about today. So we're going to talk about science, which is one of our studies. But I think before that, I want to just take you through a little bit of a journey to talk about how we started, how it all began, and what we learned early on. So when I was a clinical lecturer way back at the University of Warwick in 2013, there was no research in children's orthopedics, and there was one condition which is called slip epiphysis, which this is an X-ray of it, and it's where the hip bone slips out of place. And we wanted to do the first clinical trial in children's orthopedics, and it was going to be an amazing clinical trial. So the first thing we did, because my boss at the time told me it was the most important thing you can do to get people on board, was to create a logo. So we got the most beautiful logo for this beautiful clinical trial, and we drew it ourselves, and we designed this trial. And look, it was the world's most complicated clinical trial in the world. There was all sorts of bits going everywhere, and it was going to be amazing. We were going to completely revolutionize this condition. Until I spoke to one of my mentors at the time, Matt Costa, and he said, it's impossible. He said, you can't do that trial. He said, have you even got the patients on board? And so I kind of stood back and I was like, I'm not entirely sure what you mean. And so then at the time we had a chat about what patients might think about the different interventions in the study, how patients may view the outcomes, and lots of different bits. And I went away and I talked to a group of patients. So I talked to some patients about all of those different things, about how we might develop the study. And through that, which was my clinician scientist fellow, so advanced fellowship as it is now, we completely changed the study. So the BOSS trial became the BOSS study, just because patients fundamentally told us that they wouldn't be randomized between the interventions. So I changed my whole clinician scientist fellowship based on what patients were telling us to do. And of course, we had to change the logo. And through the whole journey, so through that whole clinician scientist fellowship, I really kept the patients with me and kept them on board. And you know that normal patient information leaflets for studies look like this. And very quickly, we learned that by working with patients, and especially children, because it's really fun, you can get the kids on board to help you design really cool patient information leaflets, which are much more fun, much more accessible, look much more like this compared to what they did before. So through that, I've got involved patients throughout in the study setup, in the study oversight. They're at every part of the journey, and we'll talk a little bit about that. So following the clinician scientist, which was a study, it wasn't a trial, it was an observational study. That was the point where we have to start randomizing and do randomized controlled trials, and that's where Phoebe became involved with the group, with what we do. And so the first trial that we did was about a wrist fracture in children. It's called a torus fracture. It's a super minor wrist fracture that little kids get, and it's like if you're driving a car and you get a little dent in your car, so that the car doesn't smash up completely, it just gets a little dent. And NICE at the time said that they want to compare no treatment for these fractures versus whatever we do now. So casts, splints, whatever we do. So I took it to a group of families and said, look, this is what NICE have proposed that needs to be a trial in the NHS. And all they focused on was that bit. They said, look, our children's sore, our children's in pain, we can't have no treatment. So the young people said, look, we need at least a bandage. But they also told me that pain in the first few days was most important. And that they helped us choose the outcome. And the parents said, look, we need at least a bandage, but we prefer follow up by text message. And the best time to contact us is after school, close to, or some people want to choose it themselves. So very early on, parents and families started informing what we did, but fundamentally changed the whole trial from what NICE proposed, which was about doing nothing, to offering a bandage. So here's a bandage. You don't have to wear the bandage. You can do whatever you want with the bandage. Take it home, wear it. We don't really mind. But I genuinely believe that fundamentally changed the whole trial, changed the whole structure, changed whether we were able to randomize to that trial or not, by just changing a tiny detail, kind of relatively, in the intervention. And we very much got families to own the study. So Phoebe and I got a design company. So we got some kids to sketch out logos. And from that, we submitted these to a design company who gave us loads of different designs for kids to start owning the study. And these were all the different designs that they came up with. And we eventually settled on force. And so this was our logo, very much owned by the kids, owned by the families, and they really engaged with it. And the children chose which the logos was best, and we used it as an excuse to go to schools to talk about research, talk about the study, to get lots of different children to select the best logo, but really is an opportunity to talk through how the recruitment might work, how families may view the interventions, and all of those little things that are really, really important. This is what the team looked like for the FORCE study. So Phoebe is here, part of the team, along with everyone else, so health economists, statisticians, trial managers, ED docs, other orthopedic surgeons. And this is Jenny Preston. So Jenny Preston was also one of my big guides in the world of PPI. And so Jenny led PPI Child at the time, and now she's moved on doing other things. But she was very much a guiding light to how to do PPI research, how to do PPI in research. And I think one of the early fundamental things that PPI helped me with in this study, as well as the intervention, was really little subtle things. So I'm going to show you. So we moved on from the patient information leaflets because we just talked about how you can make them more exciting. But actually, at the time, there was a different study going on as well called Trekker, which is about how to engage kids in more entertaining ways with animations. So we developed an animation for the study instead of the patient information leaflet.
The FORCE study is trying to find out the best way to treat a small break in the wrist bone of children and young people. Each year, about 500,000 people break their wrists and need treatment in the UK.
So I won't go through the whole thing because you can go away and watch them. But these are beautiful, beautiful animations. And they're all about 3 minutes long. And the way we do it is we write a script. We get lots of different professionals to read the script and rewrite the script. And then we involve families when the professionals kind of are happy that it's describing the interventions properly. Then we involve families who go away and help us rewrite the script again, and often it completely changes. And then Phoebe's very kindly taken it to the school gates and taken it to groups of her mum friends and dad friends and all sorts of people who then go away and edit the script further. So we start with this script. We'll go through many, many interventions where we refine the script, and we'll end up with a script to create these animations. And so it's really, really cool. And we end up with these beautiful, beautiful explainer animations. And so I showed Phoebe this one.
The FORCE study
And Phoebe said, it's all very well. It's a beautiful animation. And bearing in mind, I've just paid quite a few £1,000s to have this made. And Phoebe said, it's all very well, but we can't have this animation. So patients and families won't go for this animation. They said there's no equipoise. And well, she didn't say that. She said she said that families won't be prepared to randomize for one simple thing. Anyone think what the thing is there? So the thing was that Phoebe told me that her child and every child that she knows wants that splint, because that splint is multicolored and it's really cool. And there's no hospital in the world that's giving that, but they all want that. So we're not going to randomize because of that. So I had to tell the developers and the designers.
The fourth study is trying to find out the.
And so we had to change it to make a really simple, boring splint that was a lot more reflective of what's actually happening in the world of the NHS. So that's what we started, and that's what we got. But I really took that away as something really small and really simple, which I didn't see, and I don't think any professionals saw, because we were all concentrating on the kind of nitty-gritty. But if you actually take a step back and look at what's actually going on in the family's mind, that was fundamental. That was a massive change. And I found that was really, really valuable and really, really important. And so the fourth study was published a few years ago. It was published in the Lancet, and I genuinely believe it was the families influencing the way that we presented the materials, but also about the intervention, about the fact that we offered a bandage to get families on board. And they were really fundamental little things that we did, that I say little things we did, which I think were actually massive to the delivery of the study. And then we started to get more difficult. And so the British Society of Children's Orthopaedic Surgery at the time published in our best orthopaedic journal, which I'm sure you all read, the Bone and Joint Journal, we made our research priorities. So we said the number one research priority of children's orthopaedic surgeons is, should we fix medial epicondyle fractures of the elbow? And this probably sounds a wee bit niche to you, but to us, this little bit of bone here, so if you feel your bone, you've got a little knobbly bit, and this little knobbly bit can get broken off. And this is the broken off knobbly bit. And the trouble was, half the surgeons in the country believe that we have to fix them back on, and half the surgeons believe we don't, believe that they'll heal up in exactly the right position. And so this was our main research priority, because there was all this uncertainty going on in the UK. And so we said, okay, how are we going to engage kids? How are we going to get families on board? And, we want to engage big in this and kind of really do it in a big way. So we took a group of children to Chester Zoo and with their parents, and we had a nice day in one of the classrooms at Chester Zoo in the morning. And in the afternoon, they were left to their own devices to go and have fun with the zoo. And we also talked to the Young Persons Advisory Group at Alder Hey. And so the questions we asked them is kind of basically, what's your thoughts on the study? This is the study that surgeons want to do, but we don't really know kind of how we're going to assess it. So how you have to imagine that you've got an elbow fracture. In fact, many of these kids did have elbow fractures in the past. And we said, look, based on your elbow fracture, what was most important to you? Was it the pain? Was it your function? And at what time point was the most important? We need to measure a primary outcome. So we need to measure a most important outcome in this study. So are we going to measure that at 6 weeks? Are we going to measure it at 3 months? Are we going to measure it a year? And when we're looking for a difference, look, we've got we've got two very different interventions. We've got one intervention, which is surgery, and the other intervention, which is no surgery. So they're fundamentally different. So how big does the difference need to do in order to conclude that one is better than the other? Are we looking for a really big difference, or are we looking for a small difference? And that's quite hard to get across to families. So we did quite a lot of work with families thinking about rescoring patient-reported outcomes and how much difference that would mean to them. And then we asked them thoughts on our logo. And their comments back to us was, look, it's great, we can help you make it work, but it's got to be fun, and you've got to get famous people on board. And often kids tell us this second one, and actually it's really, really hard because their version of famous is often very different to my version of famous, which is also interesting. But so we did what we did before. So we got kids to sketch out a logo, and we'd already decided it was going to be called Science, and that stands for Surgery or Casts for Injuries of the Epicondyle in Children's Elbows, which we thought was quite cool, and we thought it was all about bringing science to orthopedics, so we thought it was kind of cool. So we got kids to sketch out example logos. We sent those to designers again. We came up with lots of cool designs. Again, we had a competition amongst kids, and they could select the winning logo, which was this. And so this was ultimately our science study. And there's a group of kids, and me looking in a little bit younger, perhaps quite a lot younger, to choosing the logo, which was cool. And we very much got families on board. We very much got kids and families to own the study. When we saw kids with this injury, we got them to shout about it, to kind of use social media to really try and get people on board and get people owning it. Even my children were forced to be involved in this study. And this is them looking younger with their hammer beads. I do let them have a nice time sometimes as well, but they're forced to do trial material. And I've already talked about the fact that we were trying to move away from having paper. And the science study was the first study we had where we said, look, we're not going to have any paper. There's no paper anywhere in this study. So kids don't want paper. Kids telling us that this is killing the planet. They want everything online. So all of our materials are online. So all of the patient information leaflets were embedded in a beautiful website. We've got animations which are in the website. Phoebe and the team helped us design everything, helped us create it. We had a professional design company that developed it called Morph. But very much it was iteratively working between them, between us, the kind of clinical group, and the parent group. And it really was a partnership. It's really a big partnership in how we deliver this and how we make it beautiful and accessible to families.
The science study is trying to find...
So we did exactly the same thing. We developed these cool animations, cool videos, and I think families and the parents who subsequently were part of the study really bought into it, really understood the controversy, really understood the problem with it. And although the interventions were really, really big, so a huge difference between them, either going to the operating theatre or not going to the operating theatre, quite fundamental, we still managed to get families on board, which actually people told us beforehand it was impossible. They told us it was impossible to get families on board with such big research.
The science study.
And so for surgeons, we learned the language of equipoise. So we work with psychologists to talk about what families do and don't like in terms of the way that they like to be explained studies. So families often don't like the word study, don't like the word trial, because a trial is what happens to guinea pigs. They like the word study. They didn't like tossing a coin or rolling a dice because they thought it was trivializing what we did. So we talk about fairly allocating the interventions using a process called randomization. Families don't like the words new treatment or old treatment because guess what? Everyone wants the new treatment. There's a big new treatment bias in the world. And so we had lots of conversations with Phoebe and the team to talk about that, and with the psychologists about how we might overcome these things. And we as surgeons learned to build research teams. I think some of the things that I took away from what Phoebe and the team, the PPI team, helped me as we went along, was really simple things again. So initially we pitched it as surgical fixation versus natural healing. And I remember Phoebe telling me, look, everyone wants natural healing. Natural healing is where it's at. So we had to kind of, and this was kind of early on when we were still playing around with things, and we were noticing this bias towards natural healing, which we as surgeons didn't expect. We actually expected there to be a bias towards surgical fixation, which wasn't the case at all in the study. We just didn't see that. But Phoebe said, look, everyone wants natural healing. So we had to kind of spin the words a bit to say that we're going to do surgery, which is going to allow the bone to heal in its natural position. Which is kind of like spinning it around, but you're then re-emphasizing the natural bit on the surgical bit, which is putting the kind of the good and the bad bit together to kind of lessen the effect. But again, it's the little things that I just don't see that really, really made a huge difference. And I'm really grateful because we were able to deliver it. And based on those things, we created what we call the perfect pitch, which we do for all of our studies now, where we try and create a script for surgeons or research nurses or whoever's there in the ED or the orthopedic clinic to talk to families about things to say, things not to say, things that might upset families, to really try and explain to them that every little thing you say is going to make a difference in what's happening. And then in terms of getting famous people on board, so I did write to some famous people because children kept telling me that we needed to get famous people on board. And this is probably the best thing I ever got. And I'm going to show this in full because it's so cool.
Zand, I'd like to ask you a favour.
Never mind that, Chris. You know what? I was just thinking that the best thing about being a doctor is that you always know exactly what to do in any given medical situation. It's brilliant.
Really, Zand? Well, what about certain types of elbow fracture? Like
an epicondylar fracture.
An epicondylar fracture, exactly. Or certain kinds of wrist fractures where the bones are really, really out of place.
Ouch.
Would you always do surgery? Or do you always avoid surgery and put on a cast? Would you know what to do?
Well, some doctors do surgery because they think it'll help a child get back to normal life quickly, but other doctors do it differently.
Exactly, Zand. We're not quite sure what to do.
You know what the problem here is, Chris? We don't know what to do. We don't know which treatment is best.
Well, that's exactly what I'm trying to tell you, Zand. That's what I want
What we need to do is a clinical trial. Okay? Now here's how it works. You take patients with the same problem, like the same fracture, and you split them into two groups. And then when you've got the two groups, with one group you do the surgery, the other group you treat them with casts, and then you see which two groups do better. It's brilliant. It's called a clinical trial.
Yes, Zand, I know that. That is exactly what surgeons are trying to do.
I tell you what, Chris. Also, people get a bit nervous about going into clinical trials.
That's true.
So we should make a video encouraging kids to sign up for clinical trials if their doctors ask them to.
Yes, Zand, that's exactly the favour I've come to ask you to do.
Right. So here's how you do it, Chris. Hey, everybody. If you're invited to take part in a clinical trial, you should definitely sign up to do it because you'll get excellent treatment and you'll be helping doctors and patients in the future who come after you.
Well, there you go. That is that's a brilliant example of exactly what I wanted to do. Thanks very much indeed, Zand.
Right, I'm glad we got that done, Chris, because I have a little clinical trial of my own to conduct. I need to clean my toenails, and I'm wondering whether to use your fork or your toothbrush. So I'm using the fork on the right foot and the toothbrush on the left. Bye, everybody.
What? Those guys are awesome. I love them so much for that. And I thought that was hugely, hugely important to the way that we explain things to kids. And if you don't know who they are, because they're not in your world of famous, for kids, they're really super famous. They're Dr. Zand and Dr. Chris from Operation Ouch. So they're proper famous in for my audience, which was exactly what I wanted to be. So the study has been recruiting for ages, partly because of COVID and partly because it's a relatively rare injury. And we have these peaks in the summer months when children go outside and break themselves on playgrounds. And then at this time of year, it's all nice and quiet because children aren't playing outside and breaking themselves. So we have peaks in the opposite period to when most doctors have peaks. Our peak is summer season when kids are playing outside. So we finished this last year in terms of recruitment, and we have got it accepted in the Lancet. So it's going out into the Lancet next week, which is really, really cool. I was hoping it was going to be today, but it's not today. And therefore that does mean that I can't tell you the results, but it's going to be amazing. And check out the website next week, which is sciencestudy.org or the Lancet, and you'll find the result there. But with Phoebe and the families, not only were we able to do the study, we've also thought about how we're going to disseminate the study. So we're going to disseminate it not just through the paper, but we've also created pathways for doctors. But for families, we've created patient information leaflets that talk about the injury directly related to how it's going to affect their life, how long it's going to take to get better. Now, all of the things that families want to know, but informed by the evidence. And along with that, we've so this is one of the infographics, and we've changed the animation. So we've changed that into a dissemination animation. So the idea is
A medial epicondyle.
Families can go to the website. And they can digest all of the information in a really kid-friendly way. And again, we've done exactly what we did with the script initially. So we've completely gone through the script. We've changed it to put in the results. It's gone through panels of parents who then looked at it, seen how accessible it is, see if there's anything else they want in there. So we've got this, so it's available online. It's downloadable as soon as the study's published. It'll all be accessible. So it'll be downloadable for people if they want to play it in their waiting rooms or wherever else people may want to use this to explain what the injury is. As I say, we've got these patient information leaflets about this type of injury that we hope the NHS will adopt, and they're available so far in 5 different languages. and they'll all be freely available next week. And they've all kind of worked with families, parents in multiple languages to make this all freely accessible. And so that's kind of science. That's what we've done. We've now got a big suite of clinical trials, which run across the UK, also with some of these mirrored in North America, which is really cool. And we're very much doing the same in all of the different trials we do about engaging families, getting them on board, starting off with the logos. Our logos are always bright and fun and happy, and that's because kids inform them and kids choose them, and that's why they're all like that. We've got a really snazzy website which is called Tox Research, on which you can read about our PPI involvement as well. So Phoebe's spoken about some of that before. And one of our latest studies, which is called Op Non-Stop about Perthes disease, we've got an app for one of the interventions. And this is Teddy, who is a lad who's helped us a lot with the development of the study. And he's actually become a cartoon character within the app. And I think that's a really neat, nice kind of story. Just how we involve them and how we really try and thank them in whatever way we can for taking part. So when you do PPI, I perhaps wasn't as aware as the UK standards for public involvement, but there's lots of different there's a framework around involving people. One of the central part of it is about talking about how families change things, and hopefully me talking today has starting to hopefully we've demonstrated just how big an impact it can have, even the small things that you just don't necessarily see can have a massive difference about how a study runs, how it changes. So how do I get people involved in research? Well, look, they're involved everywhere. So families are involved everywhere, from the design, choice of outcomes, choice of outcome domains, outcome measures, how we develop the interventions, our recruitment strategies. We didn't talk about follow-up, but families are also really involved in our follow-up, about how we might reward people for follow-up, when we write to people for reminders, etc. And all about our dissemination. So they really are involved everywhere. So look, I hope that I've showed you that children's orthopedic surgeons are actually nice guys. And we're really trying to, and I think we are, involving families and involving kids as much as we can throughout the whole process. So that is me. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Dan, for a fantastic presentation and showcasing the sort of novel ways that you've involved your patients and public. It's brilliant, really, really interesting. Thank you. I'm going to move over to the Q&A now. So I've got a question in there at the moment. If anybody else wants to post anything, I've got a couple actually. So, hi, these sound like amazing activities and best practice, but for us, funding is a big issue. How were the animation and/or zoo trip funded?
Sure. So the zoo trip was kind of before we embarked on much research and things. I mean, it was actually so I know it's a big amount of money, but it's a relatively small amount of money. It was a few hundred £100 to take kids to the zoo. I can't remember the exact amount. It was about £500 or so to take them to the zoo and get a room for the morning in the zoo. And so that was funded by a small pot of money we had from the hospital, which actually kind of kicked things off. The websites and the animations, they're much more expensive, and you're talking upwards of £10,000. So depending on what you want, so lots of money. But NHR very much welcome it. So the Trekker study, which is the evidence you might need to support using animations. And using these sort of these multimedia tools. The Trekker study was very much funded by NHR. That was using this company that I work with a lot, called Morph. But there are other companies as well. So we also work with a different company called HMA who do similar work. So NHR allows you to build in the costs for these into your grants. So if you do get one of these big NHR HTA grants, which are upwards of £1 million, you can usually build the cost of that into the award.
Excellent, thanks, Dan. And how did you reach out to the celebrities?
So some of it is contacts. So I've been really fortunate. So I've got some friends who are useful. Actually, Dr. Zond and Dr. Chris, I messaged. I don't know them, and I didn't know anyone that did know them at the time. Although previously, I know I've got some sort of shared connections. But actually, I just messaged them on Twitter at the time, And Dr. Zands replied within about 20 minutes saying, yeah, fine, we'll do it. And that was really cool. And now, and then subsequently, I've been in touch with Chris, and they've been so helpful. I can't thank those guys enough. But also, other people have helped, like Nick Robinson from BBC Radio 4 an announcement when the results were complete for surgeons, which was really cool. Dr. Amir Khan was someone I went to med school with, and so he's been really helpful. So these people are so kind, like these little celebrity endorsements. As long as you keep them fun, like it is a really nice way of engaging with people. Especially your surgeon or your clinician group, your research group. It's a really nice way of keeping people together. I think it's really fun.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Dan. So following on from that, did you script Chris and Zan's video with PPI input, or did they produce something that happened to align really well with what you needed?
They did it themselves. So I told them, so they did it. So we've got two studies going on at the time then. So we had one about elbows and one about wrists. And so they just kind of, they understood it and they just made it up, and it was really cool. And also Nick Robinson of Radio 4, like, the big newsreader who interviews the Prime Minister and all that sort of stuff. So he was speaking somewhere, and I just grabbed him at the end of a conversation when I saw him. And he also created this script for the stuff he did. It was really cool. Like, these people are so clever and so insightful.
Brilliant, thank you. Have you formally assessed the impact of any of your public involvement?
No. If I'm really honest, no, I haven't. It's something that I should, and we should. So I'm conscious that Phoebe, yeah. So we need to, yeah, it is something that we need to do. Phoebe so the other ways that Phoebe and the team have been helpful, and I guess it isn't formally assessing the impact, but sort of the qualitative work that goes alongside the trials. So looking at how we approach families and things. So the qualitative work, Phoebe and the rest of the PPI team have been really instrumental in helping to unpick some of the interviews we've had with families. And I guess whilst not directly assessing the impact, that's very much document, like we can at least document some of the direct impact that the families have had through their interpretation of the qualitative work, I think.
And also just to say that through those qualitative studies, there have been key, as Dan says, you can pick out the key. We've been able to pick out the key themes. Trust has been a big part for parents to trust the process in a way, trust what the clinicians are saying, and also even little things like how much time does a parent have to take off work in order to be involved in the studies, how many school days are missed by children. So those sorts of things it's been very interesting to be a part of, that's for sure. And you can see the key themes emerge from all the interviews that have taken place.
Brilliant. Thank you, Phoebe and Dan. I've got a question for you, actually, Phoebe. So how did this make the parents and children feel being involved in such a big way?
I think it gives well, for me, being involved personally, I think it's I've been involved from the start with some of Dan's trials. He does an awful lot more than I'm part of, but being able to be there from start to finish, and seeing how a trial works has been great, coming from a totally non-medical background. I think Dan would have liked one of my children to perhaps participate in one of his trials, but we met through our children. So I haven't had one of my children breaking a bone just yet, but I just feel it's such an important way of shaping research, medical research, and being able to have the parent voice where it's definitely heard is very satisfying.
Definitely. Thank you, Phoebe. How was remuneration managed with the children, i.e., are the standard NIHR involvement fees issued to children or their parents rather than the child?
So whenever we involve whenever we involve children, there is always a bit more governance and things we have to think about. So we generally try and do that now, if we can, directly through the Young Persons Advisory Group, which is based at Aldhay in Liverpool. And the reason that I do it predominantly, if I want a group of children in a room, I'll do it through that forum, because everything's in place that we can, all the setups in place in terms of the oversight, making sure everyone's appropriately checked that needs to be checked, and everything's the children are where they can be, and all of that sort of stuff. And then in terms of remuneration, that's all established as well. So generally the kids get gift vouchers for what they do. I must admit, I can't remember what the current rate of gift voucherness is, but they get gift vouchers for their participation. Often the children and the young person advisory groups are there for the whole day, and so they'll be given a remuneration fee for the whole day. And then, of course, families, whenever we involve parents and Phoebe and the rest of the team in anything they do, they get the standard NHR remuneration rates for their time, their preparation time and stuff. And yeah, but the kids bit is a bit tougher, and that is one of the that's one of the areas that's been more difficult to navigate at times, because I think you do need to do that when you're directly involving the children. I think you do need to do that through the proper channels.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you, Dan. Have you had experience involving patients and public in writing up findings? And if so, what collaboration tools were helpful in sharing reflections?
So Phoebe, do you want to take that?
So I've been involved at the results meetings, and then through that reflections are made, and papers. I'm been involved in the lay, the patient information leaflets, with the results to make it as clear as possible. Dana, do you want to add to that?
So, I mean, so from my point of view, so we've already talked about, so the, in terms of the results, there's different bits, isn't there? So there's the kind of the main paper, and then there's the qualitative work, and there's everything else. So Phoebe's very much involved in writing the lay summary. So turning the main paper into the lay bits. And so we've already talked about the animations and the dissemination materials with the patient information leaflets. In addition to that, there's a lay summary which goes alongside the paper. And so Phoebe's very much involved in translating the scientific bit into the lay bits. And then the same for the qualitative work. So actually Phoebe's probably as involved in the qualitative stuff as I am, because it's all about interpreting the findings. And she's often closer to it, I think, in some ways. So closer perhaps to the qualitative researchers, in terms of how she works with them, which has been really, really super helpful for me. And that's been great. So she's very much guided the qualitative stuff.
I think, if I can just add, it has been really good to be able to see that the information that we have produced has been disseminated out to places, out to hospitals. I've had messages from friends to say, "Oh, my child's just in hospital now with this particular a torus fracture. Oh, I've got this leaflet," and it was just very reassuring, and it was clear, concise information. So the parents were happy with that. But it's nice to see that the work, the message gets out there, and the information and the results.
Definitely. Thank you both. All the insights you had around use of language and approach sound great. Are you going to publish any of it separately as PPIE guidance?
So it's not something I thought about, but you've just spurred me on to think about doing it. So yeah, I mean, I think you're right. There is, like, I love doing it. It's super fun, and I guess we just need to put some of it down on paper just to say what we've done and how we've done it. and perhaps doing things like this and making these webinars available is a good accessible way of doing it as well.
Yeah, definitely. How does Phoebe get reimbursed for her time? Does she have an official role?
Phoebe?
Yes, so I get reimbursed when I attend the trial management groups, and they're done on Zoom. So there is an hourly rate, which I think is the NIHR rate. Is that correct, Dan?
Yeah.
So yes, so I do get reimbursed for my time.
But
But I
you
can
don't
do
have an
as
official role, do you, Phoebe?
no,
Sorry.
just as the PPI member on the study.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah. But
Yeah,
yeah, you're officially the PPI member on the study, but yeah.
Yes, I'm not. Yes, it's all in my own time that I do it, and I'm quite flexible with my own job that I can join the meetings, which is great. And I think that's allowed me to get to know the team and to be comfortable as well with the members of the team, and be able to be confident in saying things which perhaps might sound silly. Dan gave the example of the bandage, the multicolored bandage, but that made a big difference. So yeah, it's working with Dan is great. He's very open to hear ideas from parents and from the children, and he definitely takes all the information away, and very much considers it.
Thank you.
brilliant.
I think the other thing that's quite helpful about the kid, like working with children, is obviously fun, but also because what we're asking for is someone who's relatively flexible. That often fits with families as well. So we can find parents who just want to dip in to keep their mind busy to kind of do a couple of hours here or there. Around their children, or they're not ready to go back to work, but they want to do something which they feel may be helpful to the world and stuff. So we can find parents that want to do it, and that's really helpful. I can appreciate if you're doing research involving young people who are often professionals. I imagine it can be quite hard to get PPI members really engaged. But we're just so lucky having families who can be a bit flexible around it, which is really super cool.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. Did this approach also have an impact on engagement from NHS staff involved in the trial processes? I can imagine professionals also enjoy seeing the involvement from the families.
Absolutely. We just got one of our PPI members, who's the dad of someone I've treated in the past. He's just made a video for health professionals to remind them that the study's happening and remind them that families really, really, really want the surgeons to offer the study to the families. So this isn't something that's directed at families about recruitment. This is something that's from a parent saying to the surgeons, please don't forget this study. We want you to do this. And that's something that's going to go around. We run our studies by big WhatsApp groups of the clinicians and the research nurses. So it's going to go around the WhatsApp group from, I'll put it on, but from this dad saying, look, please do this. I think that's a really good way of engaging. I think, that's families talking to the doctors. It's really cool.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. This question's probably for me, actually. It says this presentation is really good and helpful. So that's feedback to you guys, and well worth viewing and listening again. When and where will the recording be available, please? So after this, you'll receive an email with the recording, the slides, and a survey to complete. So that will follow shortly once we've gone through all of the recording. Thank you. Some more feedback here. Great presentation. And then the last question is, are resources like the perfect pitch available to view anywhere? So useful for clinical teams to help recruit.
So they're not, but I can share a link out. So yeah, I can happily share a link out.
Excellent. Yeah, we could include that in the other bits that I just mentioned, couldn't we, in the email to attendees. Thank you. Right, that's all the questions. Thank you very much, everybody. Next slide, please. So thank you again, Dan and Phoebe, for a brilliant presentation. We've had lots of lovely questions and feedback throughout the presentation, so it's been very well received. Thank you, everybody. I just wanted to signpost everyone to the upcoming events as part of this PPI in Action webinar series. So we've got an event on the 18th of February, 10:30 till 11:30, and the 12th of March, 11 till 12. So the usual invites will go out around those times. And like I just mentioned, we'll also be sending an email with the slides, the recording, and an evaluation form. So we'd be very grateful if you can complete the form to help us to shape these future events. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you.
Cheers. Thanks, guys.